welcome to another episode. My name is Dean Vasic. You can find me on X at #Kangas, Instagram #Kangaroos Podcast. There's almost choke on my saliva. Tonight, it's a solo episode to preview the game coming up against the Pies this Saturday night, prime time. A lot of people said this should have been our 100-game centenary. They've been coming into my DMs, but that doesn't matter. Who cares? Anyways, I'll preview that. First off, I'll go through a little bit of news that has happened over the last few days. I don't expect a big, long podcast, but feel free to jump in, ask some questions. I'll have plenty of time to answer them. Sometimes I get a bit lost with it all. When I've got guests on and we just, talking about the game and I'll get lost in the chat and so forth. So if you do come in tonight, I'll promise to answer your questions and, give a shout out to anyone you like. All right, so there's no particular order with this news. It's not from most important to least important. But, it was interesting. I'll start with this, but the Harry Sheezel Unfiltered show or podcast or, whatever you want to call it, that was just released not long ago. I happened to listen to that. It's only about 20-odd minutes. I highly recommend that everyone listens to that. And, very good. Look, he's a very switched-on individual. We all know that. But, it was interesting to hear his side of the story about what happened with Kane Cornes. We kind of knew that was going to come up. And, how much it did actually affect him. And, he certainly had his vulnerable moments. And, there will be some people that's a bit old-fashioned and sort of said, well, harden up, But at the end of the day, he still is just a kid. And only 20 years old. I know he's a very switched-on individual. He talked about the things he does to, be professional and get that extra edge for his performance and so forth, and how personally he takes, this job and how serious he takes this job. He's trying to give himself the best chance. He does a lot of, he's very routine with his cooking. He does a lot of reading. He's does a lot of mindfulness. I highly recommend it. He talks about being present, making his being there for his teammates, making them better, which is a secret to life is to make other people around you better and be present. But we can't all be like that, I guess, at the end of the day. And he's working hard. He even admitted that. He's probably had a little bit of a down year this year, form-wise, and he probably has just a little bit. Probably hasn't been as polished as previous years. His possessions are still right up there. Different role, gone back to halfback, tried him a little bit in midfield. Haven't really tried him forward. That's the position. It's interesting to note that I think it was Hamish McLaughlin's last question. Where would you like to play? Saturday night, I think it was, and he said, look, ideally, I'd still like to play forward. He models his game on Toby Green, very similar attributes and qualities to Toby Green and, the high-class half-forwards. But at the moment, I think he's just happy to play a team role. He's still valuable across half-back and, playing a role for the team. But if you do get a chance, definitely listen to it. Other news, it was interesting. I had a couple of DMs about Sonia Hood coming out and chatting to Triple M. We hadn't heard from her for a long time. A couple of people were a little bit critical in my DMs, sort of saying, well, she's only coming out because, it's a little bit easier now. And, we hadn't heard from her for a while, but, only a 10-minute interview and spoke well, like she always does. Interesting to sort of say that we will win Saturday night. That's a big call. I don't think we will win. Probably getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. We only just beat Richmond, and we should be well ahead of them. So let's just take it 1 week at a time. But what can you do? Darcy Tucker news. Now, I know a lot of people. There's one person that came in sort of said you must be happy with the Darcy Tucker news, and no, I'm not. To be honest with you, I don't think it's a nice thing to wish someone an injury and he's out for the year. This is his kid's livelihood. Now, I've been critical of him as a footballer, but it's not his fault. He goes out and tries his best. I'm more critical of the selection, the coaches that pick him to play every week when we've clearly had better players ahead of him. Riley Hardiman's come in and has completely changed that back line, where we were playing Darcy Tucker in the first few weeks. Nothing against Darcy Tucker. He might be the greatest bloke in the history of football, but I think there's a ceiling to his game. I've said this all along, there's a ceiling. If you want to be a good team, you've got to move past players of Darcy Tucker, who's, and nothing against him, he could play a role for your team. He could be a handy depth player. If you do get a lot of injuries, 4 or 5 or 6 injuries, he could come in, play on the wing, play half back. But he shouldn't be in your 22, if you're going to be a top 8 team. That's all I said about that. And look, out of contract at the end of the year, he's out for the year with a back injury, which has sort of come out of nowhere. The club have not said much about this. I don't know what sort of back injury it is. It sounds like it might be serious. If it's for the year, he's probably done. As far as he's not going to get another contract. I don't think he's 29. We've seen the best of him. He's not going to, turn into this world beater at the age of 30, going into his age 30 season. He might retire, to be honest with you. I'm not too sure what his background is. If he is from Perth, I think he's from country Victoria, from memory. Actually, what I'm going to do, while we're live, I'm going to Google Darcy Tucker. So he is, I know he plays for North Melbourne. I'm just going on Wikipedia. So he's originally from Horsham. He played for the North Ballarat Rebels. So, look, that might be it for him. He's actually 28. So he's old. 149 games. Unfortunately, probably won't get to 150. But, yeah, that's the way it's gone. I'm not too sure how serious. Obviously, it's a serious back injury, but I don't know if it's a problem with his disc. It was a pretty late withdrawal, I think, in the VFL last weekend, and all of a sudden he's out for the year. So that's all I've said about it. The club's written one sentence and told us about it. So he's out for the year. A player that is coming back from a long-term injury. It's probably a little bit longer than I thought he was going to miss, and that's CCJ. He's coming back this Saturday. Will be this Sunday, won't it? In limited minutes, so he probably plays a half. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes. Out of contract at the end of the year as well. So it's a big second half of the year for him, whether he can get another year. He's on big money. We signed him to a big money. I think it was 5 years. It would have been close to 500,000 a year. And, he hasn't delivered that promise. But Achilles injuries can be quite serious. And, I'm not too sure what to expect from him coming back, but he's got to show something if he wants to get another year. We have re-signed players for that were out of contract. Aiden Coy's hit a trigger. I think Robert Hansen, Costanti, they've hit triggers. They've signed off for another year. So it's a pretty important time for him to see if he's got something left, because there is an opportunity there for him. If Finbar Malley, Jack Darling is 32 as well. He may want a couple rests here at the back end of the year just to miss a couple of games. Finbar Malley's no certainty to stay in the team. He's certainly playing a contribution at the moment, but they might look for another mix in the weeks to come. So we'll have to see with that. So, keep an eye on that. The reserves do play Sunday afternoon at 2:05 p.m. at Victoria Park if you do want to get down and watch them. So it doesn't coincide with the game last week, which was really disappointing. It did coincide. I watched the second half on my phone coming home onto the train. So, but I would have liked to watch the whole game, to be honest with you. For Will Phillips, trade rumours. Now, apparently West Coast are keen on him. I don't mind that, to be honest with you. I think West Coast could use him, to be honest with you. If there's going to be a club that he's going to get good opportunities at, it is West Coast. They don't have much depth in that midfield. They've got a couple, Elijah Hewitts. They've got a couple, kids coming through there. He's been an assistant for 4 or 5 years. He has developed. He's not going to get a game at North Melbourne, by the looks of it anyway, unless there's injuries to a Wardlaw, LDU or something like that. And he is good enough to play at this level. I'm hoping, now West Coast they're not bad to deal with because they tend to be like us and pay for overs. I wouldn't trust Royals to ask for anything more than a third rounder. He's too generous, in my opinion. I'd love to get a second rounder. If they finish last, that'll be, and it's not a tough draft, but if you can have 3 picks in the 20s, 20s and early 30s, because after all the academy prospects and NGA and father-sons, father-daughters and whoever else, there's going to be, it's going to slip down a lot to the 20s. So they might just say, look, just take this. We're happy to take that. We'll take an established player. So, if there's one club that he could excel at, it probably would be West Coast. And I hope he has And he needs to, I think, the way this is going, he needs to leave. He needs to do the decision that's best for him. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out for the rest of the year. It was probably this time last year we were questioning whether he was going to stay this year, and he sort of came good, played a tag and roll. I think at this time against the Demons, did a really good job on Clayton Oliver. I'm going to talk about his tag and roll very soon when we preview the Collingwood game. So there could be a role at West Coast. He wouldn't be a tagger there. He'd probably be a number 2 midfielder, number 2, number 3. He's got leadership qualities and he adds a bit of experience. I know he hasn't played much, but he's been assistant 4 or 5 years. So that's probably what they need, West Coast. So I don't mind that. The mid-season draft is coming up. So with Darcy Tucker having a full year out and Miller Bergman out with an ACL, it probably does give us an option of grabbing 2 players. To be honest with you, I'm not a big advocate for these mid-season draft. I think it's a waste of time. I would rather just a mid-season trade period, to be honest with you. I mean, how good would it be now to trade Will Phillips to West Coast if you want to go there? If there's a couple other fringe players that, Eddie Ford may say, look, get rid of me. I want to, this gives someone like that an opportunity to establish himself at another club. And, at the end of the day, if he doesn't get a game for the rest of the year, Eddie Ford, he gets delisted, he's out of contract, and then all of a sudden, every club's going to be looking, well, if you can't get a game at North, he's not going to get a game for us. So, you got to, it would be beneficial for these players rather than actually just getting these VFL players where 1 in 10 might hit or something like that, or a Sandford player or Waffle player. Apparently, we are linked. Look, I don't know much about it, but we are linked with Tom McCarthy from Richmond's VFL team, a rebound defender. If I was going to pick a position for North to get a player, it probably would be a rebounding defender. I still like to see Shizu move up to the ground. We've got Josh Coda, who seems to be 3 or 4 weeks away from being 3 or 4 weeks away. Miller Bergman's out for the year. We probably are struggling for that rebound defender. If I don't look, I'm going to talk about Zach Fisher soon. He's coming to the team, but I don't like to see him as a rebound defender. If you've got Caleb Daniel there, you might have Colin McKercher, Harry Sheasel. That's not the preference to have those players. If we can get someone else, like a poor man's Massimo D'Ambrosio, like in the mid-season draft, you could certainly play him on halfback. So I wouldn't want to use 2 picks because I think it's an 18-month contract at the moment. They can nominate for 18 months. And if we're going to get a player of Tom McCarthy for 18 months, I don't want to get 2 of them because list spots are going to be tight. And if you're going to do trades and want to get 3 players in the 20s in the draft this year, I'm not too sure how that's going to go. Like, let's say we do trade Will Phillips for a pick in the 20s, then we need to clear list spots. So, and if we want to trade in a couple of players, we want to get, I don't know, let's say we do get Braden Maynard. That's got to come in. A player like that's got to come into the team or something else. Leka Lee, that'd be nice. But he's come in this week, so I don't think we're going to get him. But, other than that, I don't know much about the mid-season draft. It's a bit of a lottery. It's a bit of a guess. So, I'm not going to put too much importance on it. All right, let's go to the last time we played Collingwood. Now, we're going to start previewing this game, so I've got a few notes here. Now, a heartbreaking 1-point loss after being 53 points up early in the third quarter. The first goal, I think Cameron Zurhaar kicked. 19-4, 118 to 18-11, 119. Overrun in the last quarter, conceding 6 goals 4 to 1 goal 2. Notes, Bobby Hill took mark of the year and kicked the winner at the 27-minute mark. And right at death, Bailey Scott should have had a 50-metre penalty to have a set shot to win the game, which would have been about 25 metres out. Don't know if the nerves would have got the better room. No guarantees, but still would have given us probably our best opportunity. And Zach Fisher, right at the death, at the 32-minute mark, a 24-second timer, which was only a few seconds left in the game, had a snap that just went across the face of the goal. If he was 5 metres closer, that probably would have gone in. Will Phillips tagged Nick Dacos for 3 quarters before being subbed out to put Liam Shields on Dacos in the last quarter. Got overrun. Liam Shields was just too slow for him. I think Dacos had 10 possessions, 2 goals in that last quarter. Our best for the day were LDU with 31 possessions, 16 contested. George Wardlaw, 30 touches, 3 goal assists. Nick Larkey, 4 goals. Curtis Taylor, no longer with us. I don't mean to say it like that. No longer in our list. Had 22 touches with a goal. Zerhard, 3 goals. Harry Sheasel, only 19 possessions, but spending time as a half forward and midfielder, kicking 2 goals. Tristan Xerri, 30 hit-outs, 11 contested, 6 tackles, just the usual. That's a bit surprised, actually. He didn't lay probably as many tackles as he usually does. So there you go. That was pretty much the notes for that game. So we'll go to team changes for this week. I'll just get that up right now. So we do have a Zach Fisher coming into the team. And Paul Curtis, of course, comes back into the team. Out of the team, I should, sorry about this, gentlemen, but I've got the VFL team up. Gentlemen, boys and girls, I should say. This is actually a lot harder talking by myself. It's easier when I just ask questions to my guests, but unfortunately, no guests tonight. So I'm going to have to scroll. I actually got a booster on the internet, so this should just flick pages a lot quicker than it should be. But Australian internet is pretty ordinary. So I'm just going to go to the team lineups now. This is a very disorganised podcast, as you know. So Bailey Scott comes out and Zane Duursma comes out as well. No surprises there. Both players, particularly Bailey Scott, had no impact on the game on the wing. Need to come out, and Zane Duursma, impact sub, only had the 1 touch as well. It wasn't a great touch either. I think he kicked it trying to centre the ball, which got intercepted. So on the emergencies, Will Dawson didn't do much in the reserves last week, so I'm surprised he's emergency. Big key defender, Will Phillips, emergency, and Robert Hansen as well. So on the bench, so these are the options for a sub. Finn O'Sullivan, Luke McDonald, Zach Fisher, Luke Parker, Jacob Constanti. I'll say it's going to be Luke Fisher. I seem to get these right. I think the last few weeks I've pretty much guessed the sub, Bailey Scott, Zane Duursma. So Zach Fisher, I think, will be the sub this week. Toby Pink gets the big job, the blanket on Brody Mychek. He'll probably have a sleepless night on Friday night, knowing that Toby Pink's going to blanket him. A lot of talk about Aidan Cord. Maybe should have come out of the team, but outside of a couple of things he did last week, he wasn't too bad. Didn't have his best game, obviously, but look, I don't think there's going to be too many changes out of a winning team. But those couple of players did have to come out. Paul Curtis is a big one to come in. The potential All-Australian forward pocket. Chad Wingard had high praise for him. He's a favourite small forward for him to watch. Very similar player to Chad. So I like that. Very classy inside that 450. Still waiting on Geordie Payne to get a game. So, unfortunately, he couldn't come in, could he? And, that's just how it's gone. So the key is probably Tristan Xerri again. He's going against Darcy Cameron this week. So, and probably Mason Cox will probably stay in the team. So he's going to have his challenges. Apparently, Kane Cornes thinks, not to harp on about Kane Cornes, but he thinks that Darcy Cameron is a better ruckman than Tristan Xerri, as laughable as that sounds. But if we want to be competitive, Tristan Xerri's got to dominate again. He's been very dominant in the last 3 or 4 weeks, and when he dominates, we're not much better team. We're a much more competitive team, and we are in the contest all the time. It's going to be interesting to see how this centre square is going to go. Luke Davies, Uniac, I should just call him LDU, spent a fair bit of time forward last week. So didn't have the CBAs like previous weeks. It's generally been, in a 90% plus CBA time for pretty all year. And last week he only had 16. I think he still had the second most, obviously behind Tristan Xerri. But there's more of a balance. There was 16, 15, 15s. I'll go through them now. If like LDU 16, Todd Power 15 CBAs, Jai Simpkin 15 CBAs, Harry Sheasel had 8. So Luke Parker 13, George Wardlaw 12, and Colin McKercher had 2. He's only 2 for the year. So they tried a bit of a different mix in that midfield. If you've got Tristan Xerri there, you can play whoever you like. So nothing wrong with that. So that's going to be, for me, that's probably the big key out of the game that we want to see is if he can dominate ruck, give first use to that midfield, we're a big chance. We almost caused a boil over last week against them, so you never know, do you? we have to get off to a good start. Like last week, won our first quarter, but we can't let ease up in the second quarter as well. I think last year we jumped them in that first quarter, so it definitely made a difference. I think we were 6 or 7 goals up in the first quarter, so last year. So that's going to be important. Take their crowd out of it. Playing on a faster deck. It was interesting, talking to Jesse. Sort of has mentioned this a number of times that we don't look great on the fast deck of Marvel. We haven't played some good footy there at all this year. Besides maybe the Melbourne game, and that was pretty much through the centre clearance. And Melbourne were really poor early in the year. They can't deny that. They're a different team now with Cozzy Pickett back in there. So it's going to be, interesting to see how this goes because we're generally not a fast team. Getting Zach Fisher in as a sub, I think, could make a difference in that last quarter. We'll probably need his run and dash off the wing. I think he comes in and plays on the wing, or maybe even as a small forward, swaps with Costanti if he's struggling a little bit. So we'll definitely have to wait and see. Also interesting to see if we do go a tag on Nick Daicos, probably the best player in the competition at the moment. So, and they've got a very experienced back line. We've got to start. We've got to, rebound the ball, use the ball really well, and lead up targets. Darling's going to be very important as well. I was a bit, last week there was just too many intercepts. It was a little bit of too much of hoofball. If people want to know what that means, it's pretty much just too much of kicking long. We need to really lower our eyes and take them on a little bit more. We've got to be risky, got to be a bit dareish. So if you want to beat them, that's just a reality. And hopefully things come off. Our skills haven't been up to scratch. Defensively, we've improved a lot. We're one of the last 4 weeks. I think I worked out with on average we're conceding something like 73 points per game or something like that. So don't quote me on that. And it keeps you in the game. Obviously, we want to be defensive, but we've got to take the game on when the opportunity is there. Their back line is still very good, even without Darcy Moore. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Billy Frampton's a good, solid lockdown defender. Jeremy Howe's a good interceptor. Dan Houston's an All-Australian. Josh Daicos has gone there. Harry Perryman, Braden Maynard, future North Melbourne player Braden Maynard, I should say. So they've still got that experienced backline. No Pendlebury and no Sidebottom this week. So, it's testing their depth this week. So that's good to see. A couple of players like Edward Allen, Lockie Sullivan have got to come in, play important roles. Ned Long is a very good midfielder, so nothing wrong with him. William Hayes. So there's a few unknowns there. And, they're really testing their depth. Look, at the end of the day, they're a strong team. They're very strong. They're top of the ladder for a reason. I only lost 2 games. That Geelong game was 50-50. It was interesting. The first game of the year against GWS, everyone was writing them off. Thought, no, they're done. They're too old, too slow. Pretty much like they rode off North in the 90s where we ended up winning the premierships. So you can't write off the Pies. They're going to be right up there. But, a potential match winner for me is still Tristan Xerri. I've said him the last couple of weeks. He has won us the game against who did we beat last week? Richmond. And big reason why we drew. He carried that team against on his back and shoulders in the second half against Brisbane. There's no denying that. So, look, he's probably the most important player. I'd like to see a bit more of a contribution from our last 6 players. We haven't been getting it. Finn O'Sullivan's an interesting one. We're back to halfback, used the ball quite well. Tom Powell has got to have another big game this week as well. Colby McKercher can't afford to fade out of games. Look, starting to get his own ball, starting to find his feet. Dylan Stevens been very good last few weeks. And we'd like to see, Paul Curtis really get on top of. Look, you probably have to think that maybe Josh Daicos goes to him. So he's got to be held accountable. Otherwise, he will run and dash off half back. And Nick Larkey has got to. He's been a little bit down. I think Nick Larkey. There's no denying that. So we would like to see another 3 or 4 goal performance and, make sure he kicks straight. He kicked 2 last week. But look, at the end of the day, it was only a couple of years ago we were sort of saying he's our most important player. I don't think he is right now. I think Tristan Cherry is our most important player, and he's probably our best player. I mean, that's come a long way in the last 18 months. But I think, we could still afford to have Nick Larkey kick 1 or 2 goals, and we can still win games of football, which is important for the development of this team. But it'll be nice for North to, for us, I should say, I might as well say it, for us to be competitive. It would be really good. So it would make a big difference. In saying that, my final prediction is probably the Pies by 19 points. I think we can hang tough with them, but I think Collingwood would just still be a little bit too good. And, this is the week where our defence will really get tested. And I think Collingwood will kick about 102 and we'll kick about 83 or something like that. Well, I think we'll score a little bit more. I think there's a potential there for us to, especially Paul Curtis. He's a very dangerous inside 50 player. And with the 3 talls, there might be an opportunity. I don't think Jeremy Howe's a really good one-on-one player. You can expose him. I think he's a good intercept player. Dan Houston, very similar. Good intercept. They're all good intercept players, not great. They don't play much of a one-on-one game. I think Billy Frampton is, will probably go to Nick Larkey. He'll do a job on him. He's very solid like that. But, look, not a bad time to get them as well while they've got a few players out. But, I just expect the Pies just to be a little bit too good. But, if we can put in a good competitive performance going into the bye and have the week off, and then we can, reset from there and go to Perth, have a couple of big games over there against West Coast and Fremantle. And then I think we've got Carlton after that. So an important month for the club. We've got to try and get those wins and start to climb that ladder. It was this time last year where, who did we beat? It might have been West Coast. And, we played Collingwood the next week and we got a bit of confidence and belief from the West Coast game. And all of a sudden, we're a new team there for probably 5 to 6 weeks. Obviously, fell away last few weeks of the season. Players lost a little bit of passion, maybe, and started to think about end of season, which does happen. And we had a couple of shocking results, particularly towards the last couple of rounds of the year. So a lot to, next 4 weeks are going to be important to see where we're at. Anyways, that's it from me tonight. Thank you to all you lovely listeners for everything you do to help the show grow. Like I said, just a shorter episode today. I really appreciate it. I'll be back Monday. I'll probably have the boys on to review our Saturday night performance, and maybe Sunday. I'm going to hit up the boys from the other podcasts as well. We'll do a mid-season show. I'm in a bit of a better frame of mind, whereas this time last year I was really struggling. I couldn't talk to the boys because we were so poor for that first half of the year last year. What we're going to talk about? There was not much positive in that first half of the year last year. So whereas this year I think there's been a lot more positivity. The English language is a bit tricky at sometimes. So, I'll try and get those boys on anyway. I'll hit them up over the next few days. Like, subscribe, comment. Make sure you subscribe to YouTube. You get notifications when the show goes live. That's it from me. No chat in the comments from anyone. So, sorry about that. No one came in. Probably sick of me ignoring their comments over the time. So, but nothing wrong with that. That's it from me. Bye for now and go Roos.